All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to La Coalición. This is a podcast dedicated to highlighting the real stories and issues and victories in the Inland Empire, which also uplift the voices of our immigrant community, from Pomona all the way to the high desert. I'm one of your co-hosts, Eddie Torres, pronouns he, him, his. I'm the policy coordinator here with the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, and here with me is my co-host to my right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jessica Alcocer. I'm the Economic Justice Organizer with the ICIJ. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them, and I'm going to pass it on to my other co-host.
Thank you. My name is Esmeralda Santos, and I'm the Strategy Movement Associate at ICIJ. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and talk about these issues with both of you. Prior to entering the space and being with ICIJ, I wasn't very too familiar with what was happening in the Inland Empire, which is crazy, right? Like, I feel like we've all lived here for an extensive amount of time, so I'm really excited to share what's going on and to be learning alongside with you.
Definitely. Thank you, Esme. I feel like having lived in so many different cities in the IE, Moreno Valley, Riverside, Paris, Pomona even, it's really interesting to see how much it's changed over the last 20 years, right? So I'm really excited to get into some of the topics we'll be touching on, not just immigrant rights issues, but also labor and environmental justice issues as well.
I love that y'all have been here so many years because I think for me it's been a little bit different. I've been kind of in and out, but the IE has always been my second home. Immigrating from Mexico when I was 11, I landed in LA for a couple of years, and then we moved into a home in the IE. And the IE is what was the place that provided my parents the ability to offer us a home, right? And so for me, the IE has always been, like a second home. And throughout the years, I've moved in and out, but I've always remained close to the IE. And like I think, like Eddie said, like it's been growing so fast and so uniquely that living in LA and coming back to the IE back and forth. I really see the uniqueness of it and the importance of uplifting this community because we are unique in our own way in our landscape and in the way that we all interact with our communities. And it's such a huge place, right? So it's really cool to see different perspectives come into play.
Definitely. Esme, did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, and I wanted to say, like, I think it's so cool that we both grew up in the same area. I feel like I hardly come across people that also grew up in Montclair, and it's just so funny, even though we, like, graduated years
That's
apart.
true.
Yeah, but, I grew up in Montclair, and then, then I moved to Riverside, and then I went to UCR, and I lived there for 5 years, and it was really interesting for me to go from one side of the IE to the other one, but I loved it, like, I feel like I really, like, I now understand like what the IE looks like because that transition. But yeah.
I think it's so true because I actually lived in Ontario, but I was like one street away from Montclair. So I went to Montclair High School and spent a lot of time in Montclair. So, um, like you mentioned, you live and grow up in an area of the IE, but then you go to college and then you learn that the IE goes all the way to the high desert, and you're in such a completely different landscape. You're like, how is this the same place? But that's the coolest part about the IE, and I think that is my favorite part about the IE, that it looks so different from one end to another.
And I'm actually going to share something. I'm going to propose we call it the Inland Valley only because the term like the Inland Empire was coined by the KKK.
Agreed.
So, like honoring ourselves and our ancestors, I know I love the word like the IE and the Inland Empire, but it's the Inland Valley as well, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably maybe an interesting topic for an episode. We can touch on some of the history of the KKK within the Inland Empire, right? Corona and Norco has a dark history with that, and sundown towns existed in the Riverside County and San Bernardino County for a long time as well. And that touches on the history and legacy of the underserved populations of the Inland Empire, right? We're talking about over 1 million immigrants in the IE. We're talking about the biggest county in the whole country, the San Bernardino, right? A lot of it is desert, a lot of it is open land, but with open land and that comes with power too, right? The power that should be given back to the hands of the people that actually live here. Great. So let's talk about a little bit more about what this podcast is going to be about. Maybe we talked about an episode about the history regarding the KKK and sundown towns, but there's other topics that we are really interested in. Jessica, I'm going to hand it over to you, and maybe you can talk about some of the work that you do with the IC4IJ.
Of course, thank you. And um, as the economic justice organizer with ICIJ, my work has been focused primarily in helping organize street vendors in the communities of the Inland Empire. As we touched on before, it's a huge community, and it's a huge task that has been previously led by only a couple of people, and now we're a team of 3, which is still not enough to cover the vast communities of street vendors in the Inland Valley. Um, so what I do is I work to empower and organize and educate street vendors on what their rights are as street vendors, educate them on what the new policies that are being enacted statewide and countywide and citywide. We also do a lot of advocacy work where we engage the community street vendors to empower themselves through advocacy, through uplifting their own voices by going to city council meetings and county board of supervisor meetings to advocate for their rights, right? Their rights to sell culturally representative food that they bring from, their homelands, food that they bring to share with communities that miss their homelands. So the street vending work is more than just the right to make a living. It's the right to represent your community, to represent your ancestry, and to represent the importance of a diverse culinary experience like we have in the IE, like we have in the Inland Valley. And, the right to be able to continue that is one that is constantly being threatened by outside forces, such as, state law that doesn't necessarily address all the needs of the communities, like in the San Bernardino area. And the work really has brought a lot of attention to me about the inequalities in this economic system that we live in. People are hardworking and people are doing everything they can, and yet still have to face barriers to just do that, just to do work, just to make a living for their families. So currently we're working with the county and the city in San Bernardino to fulfill basically the promise that SB 972, a statewide law that passed in September, to fulfill that law into a local ordinance that would back up vendors in a lot of different ways that were not previously available.
Great. Thank you for that rundown. Esme, do you want to talk about, we're under the same department, the Deportation Defense Department. So Esme can give us a rundown as to what we do exactly under there.
Yeah, and so me and Eddie, we usually are on the same projects together, but we usually do different things on them. So I work with, most of my work is with the Shutdown Adelanto Coalition. I'm just amazed by the work that these folks do. So the purpose of this goal is to advocate for the just closure of the Adelanto ICE Processing Center. And let me tell you guys, it's in San Bernardino County. It's just San Bernardino, right? San Bernardino County. I didn't even know there was an ICE detention center before I started this job.
A lot of people in Adelanto also don't know there's one in their backyard.
Yeah, and it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, there's different types of advocacy that this coalition does. Honestly, I'm so amazed by how creative these organizers are, and I'm really excited to bring some of them on here so they could tell you a little more about it. But yeah, I also work a little bit around supporting folks who have actually come out of ICE detention and organize a little bit around water justice in the city of Adelanto. We'll talk a little bit about how all three of these components work together. But yeah, I'll pass it back to Eddie.
Yeah, similar, working with the Adelanto Detention Center, working to shut that down. My work is more policy focused at the moment, so working with our state legislators, working with our county and federal decision makers, power holders to provide immigrant justice for the Inland Empire community, for the region. Currently, we're working on a budget proposal that will hopefully incentivize cities and communities that have detention centers to shut them down in return for high roads, better quality paying jobs that intersect with climate resiliency and climate justice, right? So a lot of our work, I think, has kind of taken a turn for the better to focus more on the intersectionality of everything else that impacts our region, like environmental justice issues, like labor issues, right? Before the episode kicked off, we talked a little bit about warehousing. That's also something that you can't not talk about when you talk about the Inland Empire, right? That has to be a topic because we've been exploited for that because of our land, of how cheap it was. Our elected officials decided to sell it for that to developers, and with that we get the World Logistics Center in Moreno Valley, we get the logistics industrial complex all over the Inland Empire, Ontario, Pomona, it's everywhere. Right? It's moving up to the high desert as well too. So these are issues that we would love to highlight and talk about in future episodes. But for right now, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about what ICIJ is, what our mission is. I'll say that the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice has been around for 15 years. Our quinceañera is happening this September, so keep an eye out for the invitation for the gala. Hope you all can be there and enjoy some delicious food and company with our partners. We've been around for 15 years, and we have focused on a lot of issues on the Inland Empire. We have a lot of victories, but there's also a lot of work to do, right? Our mission and goal is to change the narrative for immigrants in the Inland Empire. So often they're villainized. So often they are looked at to be folks who are coming here to take advantage of the resources, right? But in reality, most of the time, it's our community that takes the brunt of capitalism, of the way things are here. And most of the time, they're just doing what they can to provide for themselves and their family at a minimum, right? And so we're here to advocate for them, to provide everything that we can and fight for nuestras familias, your cousins and tios out there everywhere. But I'll pass it over to Jessica. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about what we do.
Well, and the thing about La Coalición is that that's what we are, right? A coalition. La Coalición means a coalition of many organizations, and we have about, 33 or more partner organizations that are all centered around the issues of the IE. Everybody that forms part of the Coalición or the coalition is an organization that is in the region, for the region, and run by the region, by people that are invested. The stakeholders of these organizations are the people, and the work that these organizations do along with us is part of a greater purpose, right? The greater purpose of the coalition is to work together to uplift the voices, to uplift the issues, and to, collaborate on solutions that are community focused. And that's, to me, what La Coalición is. Like, it's a group of organizations that are, empowered to do this work by their own experience. I think everybody that works in the IE is very passionate, and I think that's one thing that for me defines ICIJ. It's passionate, it's gritty, resourceful, and to me, that's what La Coalición signifies. It really represents the people of the region.
Yeah, and something I really love about ICIJ, well, the coalition itself, is that it's so intersectional, right? Our partners aren't only immigration, or they focus on immigration, their environmental, their labor, and it's education. But yeah, it's so vast, and it's just so beautiful to see how everyone when the coalition has to band together to support folks and support emergency crisis. The coalition has done that, for example, in 2019, where folks were being dropped off in San Bernardino, and I was just hearing Javier, our director, talk about this, how resourceful, how quick they were, and how much of their own time and their life they're willing to support la causa, the cause. So yeah,
and I'll just add that it wasn't just a few folks. It was like 500 asylum seekers and refugees that were dropped off here by the Trump administration, right? And something else that Javier, our director, mentioned in a meeting not too long ago was that our region doesn't have the funding and the resources that other regions do, like LA and Orange County. But what we do have is people, right? And people that are really passionate, like Jessica was saying, that banded together in that time of crisis, created a vast network of health providers that were doing physicals for free for these folks that really needed it, coming in, being dropped off from other parts of the country, and people that were doing the transportation and getting them food and shelter. And it was just a beautiful thing to see what really people power can do.
And if I can add to that, I think Esmeralda mentioning this event in what was it, 2018?
2019.
Yeah.
2018, 2019. This was one of the times that I was volunteering with ICIJ, and then I think that's when my interest in becoming part as a staff, a part of the coalition as staff, that's when it was really, being solidified, because I had interacted in marches and I had volunteered, several years back, on and off, but really being on the ground and helping folks that are trying to just get home, and trying to translate from English to Spanish, and learning that they don't even speak Spanish. They speak Nahuatl, they speak Mam or Quechua, and all these indigenous languages that without speaking English or Spanish, they're still able to move through, and they're still able to get home. go where they are going and fulfill that promise to their family, right?
So let's move on to the next question for our intro podcast, first episode. Why immigrant justice and why the Inland Empire, right? I think because we've been here for 15 years, the fight continues to evolve. There's different issues that pop up in a cycle, right? When you have a different president, things change, right? But even when you don't, it doesn't really matter who the president is. These issues are institutional. They're here. They're rooted in here. And the Inland Empire is such a really interesting region. I really am proud of being from the IE, even though I lived a bunch of other places, including Mexico and Santana and Reseda and Norwalk and so many other places. But I call myself from the Inland Empire because of how beautiful this region really is and how much potential it has to grow. And we want to see it grow in a direction that is with immigrant justice focused, right? And we were trying to be the voices for our community members. So I think that's why the IE and why immigrant justice here.
And I want to address a little bit more about why the IE. I think a lot of folks think that the immigration fight comes from very major and well-known mainstream cities like LA, but in reality, and I think we're going to go into it in one of our podcasts, right? We're going to talk about the history of immigration fight. The immigration fight that has been very much centered in the IE, and a lot of the fights have started and continued in the IE. And just because we don't get the attention from mainstream media doesn't mean that it's not happening here. So why the IE? Because it's been here, because it's still present, and because we are still actively working on finding solutions. I think we mentioned earlier, there's a detention center in our backyard. I've talked to people that live in Adelanto, like Eddie said, that didn't know. They're like, oh yeah, it's a jail. And this was years back in other jobs where I had to work with somebody in Adelanto, and I asked, what is that huge building there? I think it's like a jail, like a women's jail or something. Nobody knows. They were literally a block away. So why the IE? Because it's here. It's literally in our backyard. We are neighbors with a detention center, and that's just terrifying and horrifying. And I think that, it requires a lot of attention. So for me, that's why, the immigrant justice fight is here, and it's here to stay.
I'm not sure if you've ever seen like this meme, but it's like, oh, I'm not in hell, but I'm in the IE. And honestly, it makes me really mad because, like, why? Like, there's so much rich culture in the IE.
Yeah.
There's so much going on. And so, when I went to college, it was the first time I was able to conceptualize what the IE was. And so, I met so many folks from, like, the Bay, from San Diego, and they would be like, I'm going to UCR. I'm in the trenches. Yeah. And I
Wow.
It made me feel some type of way. I was like,
bro, you're in Riverside. You're not in the trenches.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I feel like a personal goal of mine is to kind of how do I say, bring back, not kind of fight that stereotype, because
destigmatize.
Yeah.
Destigmatize.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I think rebrand it.
Definitely.
And I think maybe a little bit of rebranding for the IE, not in a the capitalistic way, but we gotta own our narrative, right? Recreate this narrative that, like you said, it's a meme, it's a laughable thing, that we're a good several years, maybe a decade apart. And when I was in high school, that's a meme that I would have laughed at and probably agreed with. But that's because we have been fed this idea that the IE is trash. And it's not until that you really take your time to invest the work that it takes to be part of a community that you realize the strengths of that community. And it took me leaving the IE to really start missing it, right? There's that saying that you don't know what you have until you lose it. Mm-hmm. It took me a really long time to get used to living somewhere else after living in the IE. And, every community has its strength, and I'm not going to say which one's better than the other, but it really took me that, living somewhere else to know what I had in the IE. And it really took me getting involved in community work, whether it was volunteer or later paid, to really be aware and, like you mentioned, conceptualize what the IE is. And I feel like this, if there's anything that I want to accomplish with this podcast, is to really encourage people to be part of this community and not laugh at the memes. Sure, let's share them because they're memes. Somebody's going to share them anyway. But, laugh of it in an ironic way. Don't own that meme because it's not, it's not true.
Laugh, but then organize.
But then organize.
Then volunteer.
Yeah.
Join one of our marches
Like,
and rallies.
You think you're in the trenches. You think you're in hell. Okay, well, how do we heavenize this place?
Let's go.
And I think that's, for me, that's part of the fight.
Yeah. The meme reminded me of this Tyler, the Creator tweet years ago. You know which one I'm talking about, right? Shout out to Moval. That's where I live currently. So shout out to Moval. But the tweet was something like, Tyler was saying, shout out to my mom for not moving from LA to the Inland Empire to Moreno Valley, because I wouldn't have done what I did if that were the case, right? But a lot of us, like Jessica mentioned, she's from originally LA County area, moved over here. So was I. Like, I grew up in Reseda and Torrance, and I moved out to Orange County. And there's so many people in the Inland Empire that moved from Orange County and LA, and obviously other parts of the world too, right? But we came here because it was possible to own a home. It was possible to have a real life here, right? Not continuing to live paycheck to paycheck. So that's slowly changing, right? Because of gentrification and because of inflation and landlords just being who they are, raising rent because they want to, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the kind of narratives that we need to change back and push back on.
Like, there's a benefit to every city, like I said, and I've lived in so many, but the IE, like, it's refreshing. It's to be honest, it's a refreshing change from living in a really highly and densely populated area. So yeah, no shade to what Tyler, the Creator.
Yeah.
But like, if he would have wanted to do it, he would have done it in Moval, or he would have done it in LA, regardless of it all. Cause
Yeah.
You know what? We have some great people coming out of the IE. We have Becky G, who was from Moreno Valley.
Oh, was she?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know she claims LA, but she grew up in Moreno Valley. And then we have Fresa Regida, the Moiscoy Boys,
Right.
Yeah, we have some talent coming out.
Yeah, for sure. So on that topic, let's just go into the next question, which is, what's your favorite thing about the Inland Empire? Yeah, who wants to go first?
I could go first.
Yeah.
I've actually been prepping this. So I don't know if y'all been to the Santa Ana River.
Yeah.
That run. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
My first time was going last summer, and I think it's like one of my favorite spots. The spot that I went through was in Jurupa Valley, and like the river was so calm, and like I just put my chair in the river, and I just like, it was like, there was just families, people were barbecuing, there was vendors like walking up and down like selling their food. I'm pretty sure there's chemical in the water, because like warehouses be dumping everything into our water, but it was just, I felt the community. It was so peaceful. Honestly, like, I recommend. Don't overdo it, but I would say go check it out.
Show me on a map later.
Yeah, I will.
Can I take my dog?
Yeah.
Well, then I'll piggybacking off of that. I think my favorite part is definitely the warehouses. Just kidding. I think the landscape, to be honest. I love that I can go to the desert and then go to the mountains, and if it's the right time of year, I can probably find snow in both. I think the landscape, the mountains, the hills, they're just beautiful in spring. They're beautiful in winter. I don't like them so much in the summer. I really, I don't do well in the heat, so I just don't like it anywhere when it's hot. But I think because of the drought lately, I forgot how beautiful the hills were, how beautiful the mountains were. And I feel like I'm seeing this part of the IE landscape that I haven't seen in many, many years, where there's snow when it's winter, and there's green, and we're entering spring, and I'm starting to see the wildflowers, and I can't decide which place to go look at them because we have options, So I love that. I love how beautiful the landscape is. I wish that we didn't have, the parasites that can be the warehouses, sucking the life out of this land. But that's one of the fights, and we'll probably talk about in one of the episodes. But other than that, I just love the mountains.
Yeah. I'll touch on that a little bit, because in January, remember those 2 weeks where it rained like nonstop?
Yes.
In January, I had to go to the CBX, the border, to pick up my mom. I drove from Moreno Valley all the way to CBX, and it was nothing but green the whole way down the 215.
Beautiful.
It was beautiful, and I've never seen that before, and I was just like, wow, I'm so lucky to be here where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I think, like I said, the drought really like messed up the landscape, I think, because it was just brown. But every morning that I drive from Ontario to San Bernardino, to our office, like when the light just hits the hills on the right side of the freeway, of the 10, you just see this beautiful like pattern of shadows. like intertwined with the green. And then I'm starting to see the wildflowers, and I love wildflowers. So it's actually a really peaceful and beautiful drive. And yeah, you don't see it that often, but I'm glad that it's back, even if it's just this year.
Yeah.
Who knows what the weather has for us next year.
I know. Well, one of my favorite things is the people in the Inland Empire, because I love these people here. They're working class, hardworking people, right? I lived in other parts of Southern California where our neighbors are just like not into talking about what's going on. They're not as friendly. Not to say that everybody in the IE is friendly, right? But I can just relate to these working class folks a lot more so than other communities that I've lived in. So for me, it's definitely the people. So let's talk about a hot topic, which is street vendors and who our favorite street vendors are in the Inland Empire, right? Jessica, I know you have a lot of options to choose from since you work directly with them, but if you had to pick one, who would be?
There's no way.
There's no way.
There's no way. So I'm gonna pick two.
Yeah.
There's and I don't know this person's business name, unfortunately, but there's these tacos that are if you're from the Montclair, Ontario, Pomona area, they're on San Bernardino Street and Mills, and they're bomb. They're tacos al pastor. They're so good.
Are they in front of the old Jimenez?
Yeah.
Okay, I know who you're talking about. I love
Aren't
them.
they good?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I really like those. That's awesome. I love that taco spot. My mom took me to it recently, and I was like, that's it. Like, I'm here for a while. Unfortunately, until they're no longer there. But they are there now, and I say you guys go hit them up. And then I got to give a shout out to Eduvijes, one of the vendors that we work with. She's out of Riverside, and she makes the best, most precious, delicious Nieve de Garafa. Like, this is some legit Nieve de Garafa. Like, she elaborates this in the most artisanal way. And if you ask her, she'll be like, I just make ice cream. But no, it's not just ice cream. Like, she cuts the coconut, she shreds it, like, by hand. Everything that she makes is fresh, and the fruits that she uses are fresh and local, and she just makes amazing Nieve de Garafa. And I didn't know Nieve de Garafa back where I'm from in Mexico, because we didn't have Nieve de Garafa there. But when I came to the IE, it's one of the things that I learned about, like all these other cuisines, right? So Eduvijes out of Riverside, she takes orders.
Orderly. Thank you. Esme, what about you?
Yeah, so not really a street vendor, but still a small business in the Inland Empire. Her at on Instagram is hoopa.food.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Whenever I have events, I order from her, and honestly, she's so in the terms of accommodating for, like, she makes sure that is there anyone vegan, is there anyone like vegetarian, but she's top tier. Please go, like, work with her. She's amazing, and she's just good people.
Yeah, and she works out of her house, right?
Yeah, she does. Yeah.
I think we can include them into the street vendor work. Yeah, for sure.
I think when we talk about street vending, we're not only talking about like ambulatory folks. We're also talking about those people, the people that are cooking in their homes and catering out of their kitchen. Like, that's definitely part of the population that we work with. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome.
I have two as well from my time in Pomona.
And you trying to get me to say one? How dare you?
Because I knew you had a lot in mind.
Yeah, so, I know. You could ask me this question every podcast episode, and I will have one.
Okay, maybe we'll do that.
Yeah.
So for me, I have two. One for tacos, which is down Gary and Grand in Pomona. You can't miss their stand because I have like a really dope trailer that's like tagged and everything, but it looks like amazing art, right? Like, whoever did it, shout out to you. But their tacos al pastor are bomb. It's always packed. They're there every single day, rain or shine. Check them out on Gary and Grand if you're in Pomona. Another one in Pomona is my caffeine dealer, Noche Dia. They're there only on the weekend, but definitely check them out Saturday and Sunday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Check out their peanut butter coffee. It's so freaking good. You will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. They're originally from San Bernardino, but they work out in Pomona in front of their parents' home, and it's packed. So make sure you get there and get your gallon. All right, folks. Well, thank you for sharing these amazing street vendors. We are getting hungry. It is about almost lunchtime now, but let's get into something that we can look forward to in the next episode or future episodes. I know we talked about the Adelanto Detention Center, and that's going to be the topic for the next episode. So we'll go into the details and nitty gritty of how it came to be, why it came to be in the Inland Empire, Everything is really strategical, right? It's in a very rural area where not a lot of people around there know that it's even there, and that's on purpose, right? That's so that folks down here in San Bernardino, Riverside, don't know about it. They can advocate and fight against it, right? So we'll be talking about the Adelanto Detention Center. We'll be talking about the warehousing issues. We'll be talking about street vendor campaigns. There's a lot that we can talk about. We'll also be taking suggestions from you, from the audience, to hear what you guys want us to talk about, right? We can bring on interviews, folks from the community, have them talk to us about their lived experience as well. Yeah, anything else you guys want to add to what people can look forward to?
One thing I can look forward to is definitely having these conversations. Like that's it. These conversations don't happen often in spaces that are broadcasted. But I know that they happen, and we have some amazing conversations in this office and beyond. So I'm excited about sharing the conversations that we're already having, and hopefully inspiring other folks to get involved.
So our last question for our first episode, our inaugural episode, is what should the folks, the audience, look forward to? We talked a little about the Adelanto Detention Center, and that is going to be our next episode. So keep an eye out for that one. If you don't know about the Adelanto Detention Center, it is the largest detention center on the west coast of the U.S., over 2,000 beds for capacity there. The Desert View Annex, which is another detention center right next to it in Adelanto. So we definitely want to talk about that issue and how it impacts the Inland Empire. We do live 100 miles from the border, so that also comes with its issues itself, right? With CBP, the Border Patrol, and ICE, and their involvement in our community, right? So we'll talk more about that at the next episode. Jessica, what about some other issues?
I think you should look forward to getting a lot of good recommendations for street vendors.
Yeah.
The violence and aggressions and harassment towards street vendors has been growing immensely in just the past couple of years, but we're seeing an upsurge in the last couple of months. So I'm really excited to bring forward the voices and the work of these amazing artisans that create amazing food. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you, not only sharing the connections that I've made with the street vendors and sharing their menus and their resiliency, but also sharing about the way that you can get involved and how you can help street vendors in your community. They're everywhere, and they're part of our community, and they're here to stay. And I think everybody can have a little bit of a piece of the help, can be a little piece of the help. So look forward to that. And I look forward to just helping change this narrative of the IE. And that starts with us, and it starts with the advocacy, and it starts with you.
That's right. Esme?
Yeah. So I know in our future episodes, we'll be bringing in some of our colleagues that are part of ICIJ. And, I'm really excited to showcase a lot of their work and, give folks the opportunity to learn about them and possibly even, become a member or do volunteer with them or, maybe find their new career, So I'm really excited to showcase all the amazing work that folks are working on.
Thank you, Jessica and Esme. Once again, folks, my name is Eddie Torres, Policy Coordinator with IC4IJ. My colleague Jessica, Economic Justice Organizer, IC4IJ, and Esme, Shatan Adelanto, Program Associate with...
No.
Oh, sorry, Go ahead.
It's Strategy Movement Associate.
Strategy Movement Associate. Excuse me. That sounds a lot better. Thank you for joining us on the first episode, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Gracias.